I urge you, do not live with regret from inaction. Do not live with the regret of wondering what could have been had you said I love you that last time, but you didn't. Don't. Hola, j'espère que vous allez tous bien. My name is Kira Mai, and today I'm going to be talking about the lessons that I've learned from grief, from loss, from death. This is in no way exhaustive. This is in no way in order. I'm not here to talk about every single aspect of grief that you'll go through step by step because it's not a one size fits all. This is just my take on it. I've experienced a number of situations where I've had to deal with grief. I just felt led to talk about my experience with grief and some of the more unspoken things when it comes to the entire grieving process. So let's get on to the video. My first introduction when it came to loss and death was my great-grandmother. I vividly remember my mom on the phone, getting off the phone, and then eventually telling me that Bombo, which is what I called her, Bombo Rosa, passed away. And I was 7 years old when I first experienced loss, when I was old enough to be conscious and aware that I was meeting my great-great-grandmother. Sorry, my great-grandmother. Yes, my great-grandmother, not my great-great, my great-grandmother. Fast forward to the age of 15. I had an incredibly close relationship with my Meme and my Pepe. And for those of you guys who don't know, Meme is grandmother and Pepe is grandfather, at least where I'm from. I was very close to my Pepe. He was essentially my father, and I got to grow up with him because I lived in Cameroon for about 2 years, and they were incredible years of my life. There's something about the love of a grandparent that is so pure and unmatched, and I got to see the beauty of the love from both my Meme and my Pepe. And at the age of 15, I heard of his passing, and that was devastating to me because I was incredibly close with my Pepe, and as I stated, he was essentially a father figure to me. And so we fast forward from 15 and we go on to the age of 17, so just 2 years later. I hear of the passing of my Spanish teacher, my high school Spanish teacher, and she was quite an eccentric teacher, very, very outside the box. Let's call her Miss J. Anybody who knew Miss J knew that she had stories about her eccentric ways of teaching, her energy. She was a lot. And sometimes her and I would bump heads, but essentially I always knew that she was a good teacher. She was well-meaning. My admiration and my love for Spanish really grew because she made the classroom exciting, though sometimes it was overbearing at times. Honestly and truly, she was a great teacher. So hearing about her passing, I was of course very devastated and confused, but nothing was yet confirmed, though the talk of the school was that she'd passed away due to depression, which was a shocker because looking at her and looking at her personality, she was always very excited and bubbly. And I remember telling my best friend about it. We'll call her AC. Fast forward a few months later. My best friend, AC, somebody who was a part of my everyday. If you knew me, you knew her. Where I was, she was. Where she was, I was. I got the news that she passed away due to depression. And so with losing my best friend to depression, somebody who, we never had conversations about attempts. We never had conversations about ever being in that level or that state of despair. I had no idea. Granted, we were going to 2 different schools at this point in high school. And so I guess masking it was a bit easier for her, but we talked about everything, or so I thought. She would tell me about other people who are dealing with depression. She would tell me about other people's stories, other people's situations, but not once did she ever mention her personal struggles with depression, with suicidal ideation. And so when I got the news, my world, my existence as I knew it, my being was completely shattered and it was broken. I'm giving you guys a timeline of my experience with death and the close relationships that I've had that have been halted as a result of abrupt death. So at 17, my world was absolutely rocked by the death of my best friend. This was somebody that I spoke to every single day, multiple times a day, somebody that whose identity was embedded in mine and vice versa. All we ever did was talk about each other. All we ever did was be enthralled in one another's existence and our beings. We were interwoven into each other. And so my best friend, I don't know how much clearer I can make it. This is my person. This is 2 peas in a pod, as close as we can get. I had no idea that my twin was struggling like this. Like I had not even an idea, a feeling. I really never knew that it was bad, let alone that bad. We never talked about it. And so when I learned the news, I was baffled. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. It would have been one thing to pretend like everything was fine with like your teachers or other friends, but not me. Like I was your best friend. And you had the relationship to back it up, and my love for you, the time we spent, the things we did and we talked about, like how she introduced me into her family, and she would make it a point so that everybody would include me in her family event. Like, and I always wondered why I didn't get the slightest inkling that there was something wrong, and I questioned whether or not I knew her. A number of people, of course, who came to support me throughout the years, one of them being DK. Before I knew AC, I knew DK. From the moment I laid eyes on him, I thought he was so cool. I was in the 7th grade and I thought that he was like the coolest thing since sliced bread. He was athletic, he was very smart, and he was very handsome, and he was very nice, and I wanted him to be my friend. And so we became friends, and the love was always there. And going back to like conversations of when we were like in 7th grade, we were saying I love you from that point, and it never stopped. So DK and I saw each other just a few months ago, earlier this year. Our relationship throughout the years, though we always loved each other and we remained close, we weren't always in communication with one another just because of life, you know. We have our priorities, we have our obligations and duties and run-ins with the law sometimes. So, you know, it wasn't always picture perfect, but the love was always there. And I always saw him as who he was to his core, which was kind, loving, and caring. I'm in my mid-20s. We're in our mid-20s. And so still having a relationship from 7th grade last until this point, it's something that I cherish even more because you've seen me through so many stages of my life. You've stuck through it with me, and we've loved each other through it all. And you were just celebrating that. And I was so happy when he reached out to me. He messaged me a few weeks ago, asked me how I was doing in Italy, and I said, yeah, like I'm good. I like it, I love it, I'm glad to be here. A few days later, I get news that DK has passed away. It was a very gruesome way, and it was a very gut-wrenching, unthinkable way. Though it wasn't depression, death is death, and at the end of the day, I had to accept the fact that he was gone, though I had only seen him a few weeks prior. And with the death of DK, I can't help but to ask questions. And not even questions about why me, why him, why this. It's more so a question of like, when does the pain end? Another aspect of death and grief and losing people close to me that I've learned is discovering who they were, discovering the parts that they never told you about. The thing about death that people don't talk about often is the fact that there will be things that you will learn about that person that they didn't share with you, that they didn't confess to you. And depending on your relationship with that person, you might feel a bit cheated. You might feel as though they lied. You might even question whether or not you knew this person at all. And this part of grief is, to me, one of the most uncomfortable parts of grief, because I know how much I loved DK, how much I loved AC. I know. And I know they knew how much I loved them. And to me, that's one of the greatest gifts, knowing that they didn't ever have to question my love for them, right? But upon hearing information, not to say that you will look at the person differently, but it will be a shock. You'll sometimes question whether or not you knew that person at all. When I found out that AC passed away the way that she did, we had never even had conversations about that. And I wish we had those conversations. I was always very open to have conversations about everything, anything. That was my best friend. And so when I discovered that, I completely questioned whether or not I knew her. I was so blindsided. When you love somebody so much, you just wish that you could have helped them more. You wish that they had shared things with you. And you question whether or not you provided enough of a safe space for them to be able to share with you that information. Like for me, I ask myself questions of, did I not give you a safe enough space for you to be able to tell me that you were dealing with such hardship? I would have never judged. Maybe I wasn't the right person for them at the time, and maybe they just didn't want to talk about it, or maybe they didn't want to admit to themselves that it was a real thing. I don't know. But discovering who the people you loved were outside of what they showed you is incredibly difficult. And so I extend love to you if you're dealing with that. You're going to be faced with a reality check that you might not have been ready for. And maybe that's why they didn't tell you. But death reveals a lot. Your foundation will be completely reconstructed. It will actually be uprooted, honestly. The death of a loved one means death of yourself, because a version of you that existed when they were there is no longer. Thanks to AC, was introduced to soca music. I loved soca. Soca was an extension of me. Via her, we would bond over soca, over the latest artist's release, over beats, over events, concerts, over everything. It was soca everything. After her passing, I would listen to soca to commemorate her as a way to reminisce and enjoy the beautiful music and the memories that we built together. But after a while, it wasn't the same. And I don't listen to soca music typically. Some people say that, in spite of their passing, you should enjoy whatever it is that you enjoyed while they were here, because just because they're gone doesn't mean that you should completely rid yourself of that thing. But when it's a trigger for you, when it's an extremely sore subject for you, especially if it brings you back to a very dark time, sometimes it's easier and better to let go of that thing and to allow for the thing that you guys share to be left in the past, because it doesn't carry the same loving and lively emotions now as it did before. And that was the case for soca for me. I don't listen to soca. It was a me and her thing. She's gone. I enjoyed it for a little bit, but I can't, just because it's not the same. And that's okay. There are things that I still enjoy that we share together and that haven't changed. But when it comes to soca specifically, I can't. I quickly understood that nothing was ever going to be the same. I could listen to soca. I could enjoy Chinese food. I could watch soccer, even though it wasn't my sport, but it would never be the same. We could go to the same restaurants and the same places that we visited, but nothing was ever going to be the same. Nothing. And I know with DK's passing, nothing will ever be the same. And I have to, by force, embrace that fact. But I'll loathe it, especially in the beginning stages, because I want to go back so desperately. I wish I could go back and worry about the petty things that I worried about during the periods where they were still here. But now my biggest worries are getting through another day with this feeling of heaviness, this weight, this grief that I can't get rid of. Nothing will be the same. I will never be who I was before I knew of AC's passing, before I knew of DK's passing. I'll never be that version of myself. And in spite of that, the world will go on. The death of your loved one, the death of your friend, the death of your teacher, of your pet, stops virtually nothing for the world. The world will go on, and it'll feel like such a wicked curse. It'll feel as though no one ever cared about them. It'll feel so crippling, and you will struggle to understand how the sun can keep shining. You will struggle to understand how the clock will keep ticking. You want everything to pause, to stop, just for a moment. Take a breather, and you won't be able to do that. But later on, you'll realize how much of a blessing it is. If it were up to us, we wouldn't want to move on from the passing of the people that we love most. And so it'll feel like such a sick joke, seeing kids laugh in the park, enjoy life. Meanwhile, you're crippled with this grief and this dark feeling. But eventually, You'll be able to live and not just survive, not just mourn. You'll be able to smile again. You'll be able to appreciate life again, but it won't be easy. That's hard. That's a hard realization to come to. You don't want to keep going. You don't want to have to clock into work. You don't want to have to tend to your responsibilities when you just lost somebody who was an extension of you. But with the right people, you'll be able to make it through. Which brings me to my next point. People will come and assist you and help you and be there for you. But just a fair warning that people will also go. There are people who, before AC's passing, I thought we would stick through it. I talked to them every day, all the time. And after her passing, they were nowhere to be found. And there are people that I would have never expected to see again, who popped up and who showed up more than the people that I was speaking to on a daily basis before her passing. People will come and people will go. There are people who are going to show up for you in ways that will shock you. The next aspect that I have as it pertains to the loss of a loved one and the grieving process is that you will forget the memories, the details, the quirks. You'll forget the jokes. You'll forget. And for me, I write things down, my last moments with AC, the small details that I remember at 17, I don't remember them at 24. But I look back at the notes that I left myself when I was 17, and then I remember. They come back to me. You might not forget the sound of their voice, you might not forget the little quirks they had, you might not forget certain things, but there are details that you're going to forget, and you're going to wonder, how did that go? What did he say? What did he do? What did they order? The stories that you guys would reminisce over, you might forget. You're going to wish that they'd be able to interject and say, no, that's not how it happened. This is what happened. But they're not going to be there. So the memories that you have, the videos, the pictures, etc., store them. Keep them secure and write down every single thing that you remember about the person that you love, because eventually you will forget. Memories fade. I don't remember the details now of my best friend that I did at 16, 17. It's been years. So much has changed. You will forget, and it'll hurt when you realize that you don't quite remember your last conversation or the last hug or the last kiss you gave them. It'll hurt. Do yourself a favor and write it down. Whatever you can remember of this person, write down as much as you can so that you may hold on to the most wonderful and fond memories you have of them. Make sure that you journal. That's a very good way for you to be able to remember who they were and how they made you feel. Journal everything. And this kind of goes into my next point about the help that you need. So seek therapy, seek professional help. You could also seek out the support from your community, your friends, your family, your faith. God can help you more than anything, more than anyone. There are so many different ways that you can heal, do better. And as I stated, journaling is incredibly important. I highly recommend that you journal as a way to remember them, but also as a way to look back later on in the future to see just how far you've come. One thing that I've done that has helped me is journal every step of the grieving process from the age of 17 up until this current period. So it's been 7 years of journaling that I've been doing, and I go back and I see how much I have evolved from 17 to 24. How I view the situation when it comes to the passing of AC, how I'm dealing with the passing of DK, how I've dealt with grief, how I've continued on with life, the times where I felt like I've regressed in my healing and in my grieving journey. But at least it gives me a picture of where I'm headed, as opposed to just feeling like I'm just surviving and I have no sense of direction. I have no idea whether or not I'm progressing or not. It's been such a blessing being able to have these mediums, these different forms of technology that permit me to see the growth and to also let it all out. I don't have to overshare. I don't have to tell anybody my business. All I have to do is press record or open a book and write everything that I have on my heart. And of course, it's not clean and pristine and super clear and easy. Grieving is messy and it is difficult and it is incredibly challenging. And I'm here to tell you that grief never gets easier. You might have tools to be able to better navigate grief, but the blows hit just as hard but differently. Death never gets easier. Grief hurts. It is excruciatingly painful. You have to sit in it. That is the thing about grief. You can think that you're alleviating the pain by drowning yourself in your sorrows, by succumbing to your vices. You are hurting yourself far worse than you think you are. You might think that you're prepared, that you've gone through the worst already. This life has a way of showing you that it'll always be worse. And so my final thoughts with you are to live and love and laugh. No regrets. My final conversations with the people that I never ever envisioned having a final conversation with were filled with so much love. And I'm so grateful because I don't have to live with regret. I know I love them so much. Wholeheartedly, fully, openly, shamelessly. You must love in this life. You never know. You never know. And I really want to emphasize that because I have had the luxury of having loving relationships and loving final conversations with the people who have passed on. And not everybody gets that. I can't emphasize enough the importance of not feeding into your pettiness, not feeding into your pride when it comes to things that really don't matter. Because if you find yourself in a situation where all you have to remember somebody by is the terrible things that you've said to them or the argument that you had, and you realize it's not worth it, living with that regret will eat at you. It will chip away at your soul. Please remember the importance of loving fully. I urge you to weigh the pros and cons when it comes to situations that you know you could fix. If you know that at the end of the day you could be satisfied with the conversation that you've had with somebody that you claim to care about, that's fine. But if you have ended off, if you've cut ties with somebody in a way that is incredibly sour and you might regret the things that you've said, please make it right. I urge you, make it right, because you never know. Death will come like a thief in the night. Not everybody has time to prepare, get their house in order, and figure out how to make things right. Some people are here and gone. Present today, gone tomorrow. You really and truly never know. AC and I had nothing but plans for the future. We had nothing but aspirations and goals. And at the time of our passing, we were actually meant to go to university together. And we were so looking forward to going back to school together and having classes together and seeing each other all the time. And so when she passed away, I was faced with the realization that I was going to be doing all of what we had told each other we were going to do together alone. And this was extremely difficult for me because I had no plans of doing the things that we had planned together on my own. But I felt a sense of duty to see to it that we get what we wanted. Even if it doesn't look like what we had planned, I wanted to make sure that the plans that we had to live a life of happiness, of love, come to fruition, even if she wasn't physically there or physically present to experience it with me like we thought we would be able to. My advice to you is that in spite of the pain, from the hollowness that comes with whatever loss you're dealing with, see to it that you accomplish the goals that you've dreamt and designed with the person that you love. DK and I, we had plans, and I was looking forward to seeing him again this summer when I came back to Toronto from Europe, seeing him more often, not letting our adult life get in the way of our friendship anymore. And there are things that he wanted to see. He had aspirations and goals. I feel now more than ever a level of responsibility, I would say, to live life and keep him in mind with love. But with that, I won't lie, there comes a level of survival skills. There comes a level of feeling a bit off-put by the idea of learning to love a life without the people that you envisioned a life with. When AC passed away, this was during prom season, and unfortunately, she didn't make it to prom. And I remember telling myself, I'm not going to prom. That's the least of my worries. I don't care about anything. I really wanted to throw everything out the window. That level of despair was greater than I could possibly conceptualize, honestly. But I remember telling myself, I didn't want to do anything. Nothing mattered. My best friend's gone. She's like, there's no do-over, there's no undo button, there's no fixing it. There's like, it's a wrap, it's done. And for me, I couldn't compute a life without her. Like, she was all I knew. Every single day on the phone. So the idea of going to prom felt so stupid and superficial and unimportant. But later on, I realized that I couldn't live a life of disappointment, and I didn't want to live a life of depriving myself of joys. All I have is now. I only have the moment. I know deep down that AC would have never wanted me to forego moments of pure joy, milestones, because I chose to dwell in something that she would have never wanted me to experience to begin with. It feels a bit weird when, like I've said, there are plans that you make with the people that you love, and then you find yourself doing these things without them. Traveling and going to the same countries that you and your partner, or you and your friend, or you and your family member said that you would visit together. You get to see the clear blue waters, you get to see the landscapes, you get to see this, you get to see that, you get to walk across the stage, and you thought that your parent was going to be there, but they weren't able to see you. It feels strange, and you might feel survival's guilt, like, why do I get to do these things and you didn't? Why did you die so young? Why do I get to see this and you don't? And to that I say, you will never know why they left this earth when they did. And honestly, it doesn't give me any more comfort than you might think it does. Let it be known that the love that you have for this person knows no bounds. Remind them, even if it doesn't stop the inevitable from happening, there's not a question in the minds of the people that I loved whether or not I loved them. They know that. I told them time and time again, they were probably sick of hearing it. But trust and believe, I can sleep at night knowing that there wasn't a single time where I had an opportunity to say I love you where I didn't. I urge you, do not live with regret from inaction. Do not live with the regret of wondering what could have been had you said I love you that last time, but you didn't. Don't do it. Don't do it. Love fully, openly. May your love be plentiful. Let it be known and shown. We all have to deal with a level of grief, tragedy. We all do. There's no escaping it. I have felt it from the people closest to me. I'm talking about my final conversation with them. The most casual conversations that I have with the people that I love, not knowing that it was my last conversation with them. It could happen to anyone. These are the things that I've experienced that I wanted to verbalize. I don't often hear people talking about the hardships, for example, when it comes to discovering new things about a person that you thought you knew. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the hardships that come with people falling by the wayside? The people you thought were always going to be there, they end up being the same people leaving, trickling away for whatever reason. And I hold no malice. I had my fish to fry, they had theirs. I had no strength to be able to fight back against people who willingly chose to leave my side when I was going through very dark moments, experiencing grief and loss. But I appreciate everybody who was there every step of the way, whether they were there in the beginning and then left halfway through, or they just popped up in the end and they stayed consistent. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And the only thing that will make your grieving process slightly easier is the realization that you gave it all you got. You gave it everything you had. There was not a single thing that you could have done more to save that relationship. Knowing that you loved deeply is something nobody can take away from you. Not even death could take away the love that you have for someone that you know you gave your all to. That is the only thing that could somewhat alleviate the pain of grief, the pain of loss. Because wishing that you had done more will chip away at your spirit and it'll eat you up. So when it comes to plans for the future, do all the things you would promise yourselves. When it comes to experiencing a life outside of that person, do it fully. Live the life that you guys envisioned for one another fully. Keep them in mind. Remember that it doesn't get easier, so you must love. Because faith and hope are the only things that are keeping us alive. Faith that there's a better tomorrow. And though you might not see it, the day after might be better. And then after, and then after. Do not give up. Grief is excruciating. Like, who are you telling? I don't know how I've made it this far other than God. God himself. I've loved and I've lost. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. I have no ability to bring back the people who have passed. I did all that I could. All that I could. I've fallen so many times. I've stumbled and I've tumbled and I've crumbled and I've been broken and I've been shattered to a point where I believed it was beyond repair. But I'm here. Against all odds, I'm here and I'm here to tell you guys. Grief is no joke. It's not easy, but you got this. There is a life to be lived. Even if you don't see it today, just take it one step at a time. Just pay attention to what you're doing today. Don't even focus on what you're meant to be doing 6 months from now. When you are dealing with severe loss, focus on the day. Don't even worry about tomorrow. Focus on the day. So with all that being said, I thank you guys kindly for watching. That is all that I have for today. I know this is a little bit more on the heavier side, but it is something that is very important for me to talk about. And like I've said before, I felt led to discuss the hardships that come with grief. We will get through this. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.